Hello, grammarians, and welcome to today's screencast on verbs. Now, you may remember that when we have taught you the complete sentence, we have said a complete sentence requires a subject, a predicate, and a complete thought, and predicates are always played by verbs. So this screencast is going to just go into a little bit more depth about verbs. All right, here's our quick verb recap. The predicate of a sentence is always a verb. Now, we talked in our complete sentence screencast about the fact that verbs can be action or linking. And I want to give you a couple more tips about action and linking verbs. Action verbs can include physical action or mental action. So, to run, to do, to write, those are physical actions. But there are also mental actions at play in the world of grammar. And those would be things like believe, think, to know, to understand, to remember, things like that. Now, verbs can also be linking verbs, and the concept of a linking verb is always a little bit more complicated to consider than an action verb. So linking verbs are verbs that show the subject in a state of being something, like he was tired. Typically, linking verbs are forms of the verb to be, those being is, are, am, was, were, been, and being. Let's go into a little more detail about that. So action verbs, in addition to being physical actions or mental actions, can also be considered transitive or intransitive. Again, these apply only to action verbs. A transitive action verb expresses an action that is being directed toward a person or a thing that is then named in that sentence. And then the words that receive that action are called objects. Let me give you an example. If you say Neil rang the bell, Neil is our subject. He's always identified in blue. Rang is our predicate. He's always identified in red. And then if you ask, well, what did Neil ring? In this sentence, there's an answer. He rang the bell. So if Neil rang the bell, you could say, well, what did Neil ring? He rang the bell. The bell becomes the object. Juanita mailed the package. Okay, our subject is Juanita. The predicate, the action of the sentence is mailed. And there is an answer to what she mailed in the sentence, package. So package is the object. Now, if an action verb is not transitive, in other words, it does not have a word in the sentence that is receiving the action, then it is called an intransitive action verb. So an intransitive action verb expresses an action without referring to an object. Here are a couple of examples. Marcy studied very late. It doesn't say what she studied, just that she studied. So that's an intransitive action verb. If you say Trevor ran, you don't know what he ran. He didn't run the meeting. He just ran. So in that case, Trevor ran. Ran is an intransitive action verb. Take a second to try to identify which verbs in these sentences are transitive and which verbs are intransitive. And remember this tip. If you can say what to the verb and you get an answer in the sentence, then you have a transitive verb. Okay, good luck. Let's move on now to linking verbs. A linking verb is called a linking verb because it links the subject of your sentence with a noun, a pronoun, or an adjective that somehow describes that subject. In other words, it links your subject to another word in the sentence. Typically, linking verbs are forms of to be. And again, those are is, are, am, was, were, been, and being. But there are also other linking verbs, and those could be words like appear, become, feel, grow, hook, remain, seem, smell, sound, taste, or turn. So for example, you could say the woman was tall. In that sentence, you have the subject, the woman, and she's being linked to a describing word, tall. So the linking verb is the word in that sentence that is linking those two other words together. My best friend is a teacher. You've got the subject friend linked to the word teacher, and they are being linked by the to be verb is. Now, just to show you what other linking verbs could do in a sentence to be linking verbs, you could say she appeared fearful, or he became ill, or you seem tired. Those are all linking verbs, linking the subject of your sentence to whatever describing word comes next. All right, here's a hot tip on linking verbs. Sometimes that word is a linking verb, but sometimes it's serving in the sentence as an action verb. Here are a couple of examples. The wet dog smelled horrible. Well, in that sentence, the dog isn't physically doing something. That dog is in a state of being something, right? He's in a state of being disgusting smelling. So smelled in that sentence is a linking verb linking the dog to horrible. If you look at the next example, though, you've got the dog smelled his food. Now that's an action. You've got the dog doing something. And actually, it is also a transitive action verb because you know what he smelled. What did the dog smell? His food. If you can answer that question, you've got a transitive verb. All right, now you try it. The motor sounded good and the horn sounded at noon. Which one do you think is linking and which one do you think is action? And I also want to know in your action verb, is it an action transitive or an action intransitive? Now, here's a tip on knowing whether your verb is linking or action. If you can replace the verb with a form of to be like is, and it makes sense, then you know you have a linking verb. If it doesn't make sense, the verb then is going to be an action verb. We'll try it with that wet dog. That wet dog smelled horrible. If you can replace it with is and it makes sense, then you've got a linking verb. That dog is horrible. It makes sense. Let's try the next one. The dog smelled his food. The dog is his food. Notice how that one doesn't make any sense. Therefore, you know that's not a linking verb. That's an action verb. So you can try that with the motor and the horn. And now we come to our final concept around verbs, and that is the verb phrase. A verb phrase is a main verb that follows one or more helping verbs. Now, the word helping verb is also known as auxiliary verb. You can use either term interchangeably. Of course, you will have to know both terms just so that you are flexible in your knowledge of what a verb phrase includes. Here are some examples. If you say Sean is leaving tomorrow, you have two verbs doing the job of the predicate. And so both of those verbs together form a verb phrase. The last verb in your verb phrase is always your main verb. And then whichever verbs occur before that main verb, those are all your helping verbs. So you can have one, as in Sean is leaving, that has one helping verb is, or you can have multiple helping verbs. For example, if you say the post might have remained upright if not for the wind, might have remained is your entire verb phrase. So it includes two helping verbs and one main verb. The same is true for the final sentence in this group of examples. I could have thrown the ball if I weren't so tired. Your helping verbs are could and have. Your main verb is thrown. All three of those verbs together create your verb phrase. Now, I want you to notice that verb phrases may be transitive or intransitive action verb phrases, or they might be linking verb phrases. So let's go back and take a look. Sean is leaving tomorrow. Well, that's an action verb. You know that because you know Sean is physically doing something. Does the sentence tell us what Sean is leaving? Like, is he leaving his suitcase? No. So in that case, since there's no what being answered in this sentence, we know it is an intransitive action verb. So if we say the squirrel could jump 15 feet, that's also an action verb phrase. We don't say what he could jump, and so that also is intransitive. It is an intransitive action verb phrase. Let's go to the next one. The post might have remained upright if not for the wind. Well, let's see. Does the post do anything in this sentence? Not really. To test it, I'm going to use that tip I learned a couple slides back, and I'm going to take might have remained and replace it with the verb is. The post is upright. Well, that makes sense. So now I know that might have remained is a linking verb phrase. The next one, I may become ill if I eat that. Okay, I'm not doing anything in this sentence, so I'm going to try that trick again to see if this is a linking verb. And I think that it is because it's not action. I am ill. Well, that makes sense. So that is a linking verb. The next one, I could have thrown the ball if I weren't so tired. Could have thrown. Well, I think that's action, but if I was confused, I could try that exercise again where I replace my verb with the word is. Well, in this case, I'd have to say I am. I am the ball. Well, that doesn't make any sense at all. I'm not the ball. I'm doing something to the ball. So I could have thrown. I know that is action. Now, is it transitive or intransitive? Remember, transitive means I know what I'm throwing. I could have thrown what? The ball. Oh, well, that's a transitive action verb. Now, you might be wondering, okay, how did you know that all those words that came before that last verb were also helping verbs? Like, is there a list of helping or auxiliary verbs? Well, my friends, yes, there is. In fact, there are 23 helping or auxiliary verbs. I'm going to need you to memorize these. Here they are. They are the 8 forms of to be. Be, is, are, am, was, were, been, being. And then you can just make a little rhymey thing out of it. Make a rhythm. Do, does, did, have, has, had, can, could, shall, should, will, would, may, might, must. And there you go. You're going to have to do some memorizing in your life. This is one of those times, so get memorizing. And here's a little set of exercises for you. Please go through and identify the verb phrase in each sentence, and then go back and identify each verb phrase as transitive action verb, intransitive action verb, or linking verb. Okay, to review verbs, you have an awful lot of memorizing of terms. You need to know what an action verb is, what a linking verb is, what a transitive verb is, what an intransitive verb is. You need to know verb phrase, main verb, helping verb, auxiliary verb, and you are going to need to be able to list the 23 helping verbs. So you enjoy that mental weightlifting, and we will see you in class. Thanks so much.